Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Sky Into Eye Show. And as you can see, we have a very, very special guest. You may have seen her on ESPN talking some foosball. You may have seen her on NFL Live, one of the best analysts, in my opinion, on the entire network. Or you just may have seen her on any show or hosting her own show. Mina Kimes featuring Lenny, the Mina Kimes. How are you?
Hello, thank you for having me. Cowboys fans watching this, we did our NFC East preview, I think 2 weeks ago. So go check that out, youtube.com/@MinaKimes. A lot of Cowboys talk always on the channel.
Oh, of course. It's Dallas,
Got
right?
to.
I have my own Mina Kimes here, if you will, and Aisha Morrison. We call her 2I here. How are you today, lady?
I'm good. I'm ecstatic. This is a long time coming. Mina's actually the person that I looked at on TV after I had my disability and my injury in the military and was like, oh, okay, I think I can do this. She inspired me to try. And so she's someone I really look up to. So I'm ecstatic to have the opportunity to talk to her. But her football mind is so vast. It's a pleasure having you here, girl.
So is yours. So is yours. You do a great job, and that's really nice of you to say. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, Mina, the Cowboys have started training camp, and if you look at all the drama, you wouldn't notice that there's actual football things going on out there. But we're going to try to stick as much as we can to the football aspect of what's happening, opening up training camp. But before we get into the actual camp, you had talked about Dak Prescott a few years ago and his using his legs outside the pocket. I mean, a fantastic segment. I believe it was on NFL Live. And you mentioned how he was kind of top five-ish in a lot of the categories and throwing outside the pocket and using his legs, getting first downs. But then last year he had the injury. And me and Tuai were kind of wondering, how do you think the Cowboys, navigate around that? Do you think he'll kind of nerf himself, or do they rely on another aspect of the offense?
2i is such a funny nickname. I'm thinking of the defensive line technique every time you say that. Yeah,
That's out the box.
it'll be interesting, right? Because Dak is first and foremost a pocket quarterback, kind of a rare breed these days in the NFL. But he is a little bit always been, he brings a bit more mobility than say like a Jared Goff, who I would put in that other, when we talk about quarterbacks who are in the upper top half, and there's increasingly most of them are dual threat. The ones who are a little bit less likely to scramble, a little more likely to win from the pocket. Dak's sort of in that in between zone. He clearly wants to play in the pocket. I think that's his preferred style. But I think what you want to see from him, ideally, is not necessarily a lot of design quarterback runs baked into the offense, but just a willingness to scramble if the openings present themselves. If it's 3rd and 7, and I don't know, the defense is playing man coverage and he sees grass, you want him to take off. If there are short yardage opportunities where maybe you can at least have the threat of him keeping, you want to integrate that a tiny bit. So you're not asking him to carry the football a great deal. But I think ideally for Dallas, especially given I think the amount of attention that's going to be paid to the 2 wide receivers this year, you'd like to see some opportunistic scrambling from him.
No, you said you want him to be willing to do it, and that's kind of how we feel as well. I know Sky and I have talked about the fact that we don't necessarily want to do a whole bunch of design runs like you said, but if he sees grass, take advantage of it. The threat needs to be there. And you see across the NFL the guys that do threaten that way, that it changes a defense and it can really, really be decimating for them. But also, too, we want him to maneuver the pocket, like to be able to move around. And that's one thing I did see at minicamp. And then we did get to see a little bit yesterday is the fact that he seems very fluid. He's talked about in the offseason working on his flexibility, which is important because he's always kind of been a stiff player. And him being able to just be free because it does limit the offense. And honestly, if you watch him on film, you see the wheels turning sometimes. You be like, hey, man, it's all right. Like you can go. So that's kind of me and Sky's sentiment as well. It's like we're not looking for him to do a crap ton of design runs, but make the defense pay when it's there and make people have to think about it on film for me.
Yeah, I think about Joe Burrow being a good example of that, right?
Mm.
Another pocket passer,
Mhm.
but an opportunistic scrambler. And you really see in key moments when he's willing to take off the way he's able to punish defenses. Dak is closer to a Joe Burrow prototype than Josh Allen, Lamar, et cetera. So I think there's some similarities
Yeah.
there.
A few years ago, he talked about how some of those scrambles weren't baked into the offense. I thought that was interesting to hear because usually when quarterbacks are scrambling, they're just scrambling off of instinct. But he said a lot of that wasn't baked into the offense. Well, this year they have Brian Schottenheimer, who is bringing in a totally different offense. Me personally, I believe it's going to be more modernized. We talked about this in OTAs, a lot of pre-snap motion, at snap motion, and you do a fantastic job, and so do your co-host and analyst on NFL Live, talking about how that really trips up the defenses and gives you an advantage. We don't have a lot of history of Schotty doing this because when he was OC back in the 2000s, it was a lot of Marty Ball, run the rock, play defense. But in Seattle, he kind of spread his wings a little bit. What do you think this offense could look like, even though there's not a lot to go off of under Brian Schottenheimer?
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by it because I think you're absolutely correct in saying that even though he's been in the NFL forever, he's called plays. There's not really like a consistent through line. And when you go back to Seattle, for example, I think the influence of the head coach really affected run pass balance at times. You guys remember the whole let Russ cook movement,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of hit a walk, couldn't really run the ball, and then they were turning it over, and they suddenly started running it at a really high clip. And I think a lot of that had to do much more with Pete Carroll than Brian Schottenheimer. Now he is the head coach. He is the play caller. And he comes down to the press conference and alludes to some of the modern concepts that you're talking about. I'm interested in seeing what it looks like. Dallas, I felt, it has been at times a little bit too ISO ball, just like, hey, let's get our guys to go win. And when you have players like CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, I think sometimes there'd be a temptation just to lean on the talent. But I think that there are things that they can do, not just to create space for them, but also to create space for the run game on the ground, which is to me going to be sort of the key to this whole thing, whether they can be a bit balanced, given the way I expect defenses to play them. And I'm interested in seeing what Brian Schottenheimer does in that regard, because I don't feel like we know exactly who he is as a play caller.
Yeah, we don't know just yet, but I will say even from last year, every opportunity I got to speak to him, it was really weird. And I've talked to Sky about it, is the fact that there were times you would go to Mike McCarthy's presser and he would talk about, some of his
Yeah.
ideologies. And then you go listen to Shotty talk and you like, these two
Mm.
things are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Brian Schottenheimer's, a lot of his, I do believe that he has an idea of the trends of the NFL. Obviously, you're seeing more offensive coordinators manipulate the slot, move their receivers around. We're looking for receivers to be a little bit more multiple in that way. But even with the run game, it's a lot of deception because honestly, I'm not trying to be funny, but linebackers are running 4.3s now. You're going to have to figure something out. And the motions and stuff are not for decoration. They're just to, like you said, create spacing and stuff. And as Sky said, that's something that Dallas has lacked. We got to
Mm.
see a little bit of that in mini camp and
Mm.
starting to see, we're just trying to see it consistently. Because there are times you would see it Sky right like 1 week, and then the next week you're like, hey,
Yeah.
what happened to that
Mm.
motion that we saw
Yeah.
last week? So we're
Sure.
looking
Yeah.
for some consistency with that motion side of things as well.
Mm.
Yeah, that's been an issue here for years, dating all the way back to Kellen, who actually used motion a lot more. But I think, like McCarthy and Schotty, Kellen and McCarthy weren't always on the same page. Clearly, he said they had philosophical differences. So I don't think that was a surprise. And even Jerry Jones kind of came out and said, yeah, I was in meetings when Brian Schottenheimer had to bite his tongue a little bit. So as you said, Mina, now he's the head coach. He's not having to acquiesce to a Jeff Fisher or a Rex Ryan or a Pete
Yeah.
Carroll. I'm really excited to see this thing kind of ratchet up. But you're right. The run game, if the Cowboys want to make a difference in the playoffs, they're going to have a respectable run game. And you guys talked about Clayton Adams a couple weeks ago on your podcast, the Mina Kimes show. I'm excited for Clayton Adams' scheme because historically he has been amazing. Mina, I don't know if you've noticed this, his first year as an assistant in Indianapolis, they were a top 10 rushing team for the first time in almost 2 decades. The first year as an offensive line coach in Arizona, they were a top 5 rushing team for the first time in 44 years. But those guys had some decent backs in James Conner, right?
Yeah.
This backfield's different. Mina, have you ever seen a backfield with this many question marks?
I have, but I the way the Cowboys went about addressing the running back position was a little bit puzzling to me. The players that they chose, I was pretty impressed by Rico Dowdle. I thought they would try to keep him. I was surprised that moving on from him to Javante Williams, I guess the hope is, a year removed from the injury, maybe he'll look a little bit better than he did last season. Jaden Blue's explosive, smaller player. I kind of looked at him as more of like a third down back in the draft. Again, again, there's a lot of recent history of smaller backs having a lot of success on all three downs in the NFL. Looking at like a Bucky Irving last year, for
Hmm.
example.
Mhm.
So hopeful for him. But the Clayton Adams hire is really intriguing. Yeah, like look, Kyler Murray and James Conner aren't walking through that door, and certainly it helps to run the ball when you have them and the tight ends in Arizona. But I would also argue, one, that Arizona offensive line we didn't think of as being a dominant run blocking unit
Right.
a couple years ago, right?
Very
And
important.
two, I think Dallas is going to face more favorable looks in terms of running the football because of the wide receivers in the passing game.
Mm.
So there's an opportunity for him. I think, I would be very surprised if Dallas doesn't face too high coverage at like a top 3, 4 rate in the league, provided Lamb and Pickens are both on the field. So the opportunity is right for Clayton Adams in this run game to take advantage of that. It's just going to be a matter of, I think, the young offensive line coalescing and him finding the right way to use them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can transition to the Pickens and CD conversation. I don't know if you've seen any of their interactions or anything, but one thing we've talked about here is how much they've kind of became friends, and it's like not friend, it's not fake friends, it's like rainbows and sunshine, SpongeBob friends type thing. And it sounds like there's a lot of selflessness between them, and I think a lot of people think that's like fake, but for them, I
Mm,
think they really wanna see each other succeed here. With the addition of Pickens, you just talked about how much teams that Dallas is probably gonna see too high and things like that. I mean, I feel like it's long overdue that CD has a running mate. How do you think that Dallas having
yeah.
a tandem finally for
Yeah.
CD takes weight off of his shoulders as well?
You think back to that one year with Gallup, right? And before the injuries, and um, I think actually not surprising that they're getting along because their incentives are really aligned. Like CD
Mm,
already got paid, and he would love to not have the lion's share of attention paid to him.
mm,
George Pickens is in a contract year. He has every reason in the world to
Hmm.
not only ball out this year, but also be, a good soldier, so to speak. And he too will benefit from the presence of CD Lamb.
mm.
And this is a mutually beneficial relationship. We'll see, you never know targets and all of that and how things go. And Pickens is a big personality, of course. But from a pure football perspective, they absolutely pair well together and they pair well with this aggressive, accurate quarterback. I'm incredibly optimistic about this passing attack.
Wow.
Um, I just don't think most defenses have the corners to hold up against both of them. So, again, it always comes down to like, can they be on the field? Can Pickens bring consistency? But he should be very motivated to do so.
Mm,
Yeah, and in Pittsburgh, he was heralded for being arguably the best deep threat guy, not necessarily from a speed standpoint, but statistically, he's up there with Justin Jefferson and I believe Tyreek Hill,
Yeah.
most receiving yards on vertical routes. I watching some of these clips at training camp, hearing about Tuai and some others talk about him at OTAs, and then when you see the film when he's catching slants or over routes and getting upfield, I do think, and I'll admit this, I've a little bit overlooked his yak ability, his yards after catch ability. He is
Yeah.
very smooth and sneaky with it, and I would argue maybe the best oppo of CD Lamb we've had in quite some time. I think there could be a possibility, Mina, where he's utilized all over the dang field.
I
yeah.
love that point because I think when we think of him, we just think of go balls and contested catches. And I think a lot of that actually just has to do with quarterback play.
Mm.
Mm,
In Pittsburgh, he was just not with quarterbacks who I think were good at throwing over the middle of the field. And Dak Prescott loves throwing over the middle of the field.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him and both him and CD to work that part of the field.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I got to when we were in minicamp, I text Sky. I said, "Man, this man has touched every blade of grass. It's just constant movement from him, and even in his route running, like you guys were saying, I think he gets kind of limited in what people think he's capable of. And I'm like, nah, like he can work the intermediate game. I seen him work the flats, and also too, when you talk about Dallas, Dallas has lacked a real deep threat for a while now. You see teams just keep a lid
Mm.
on it, play close to the line of scrimmage. It's been very limiting for a while. And you already know, you've talked about it, Mina, is that with the too high game, it's either you got to break it You got to go over the top, or they're going to make you be really patient and have to earn every yard you get. And most teams can't do that. Dallas, obviously, being one of the more penalized teams in NFL, you need to be able to, in this game, you need to be able to run the clock, but also have explosives. So to me, I'm looking for Dallas to take the next step of like, okay, they can drive the
Yeah.
field, but can you hit them in the mouth when you need to down the field? And I think Pickens is going to add that for this team.
Can
Yeah,
I?
and then the
Okay.
X factor for me is the offensive line, right? To what you're saying
Right.
about like, can you work underneath when you're given those opportunities? Talked a bit about the backs. This is a very young offensive line. I love that they got so much experience last year. Can they take another step? I think that's gonna be a big
Mm,
question.
I
yeah.
want to stay there on a too high situation because you guys every year it feels like those numbers just continue to rise and rise. And
Yeah.
The new norm.
yeah, it's the new norm. It's the new base defense, right, or what have you, or preferred defense. And to me, I love tight end play. So I think about like a Jake Ferguson and having a bounce back year because we talk about the run game, being important. If Jake can kind of get back to that 2023 Jake, it's going to be really hard to stop this offense because he was a beast in that middle of the field. And I'm not saying that Pickens going to only run deep routes, but how the heck do you like, you have to pick a poison, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't double CD and Pickens the whole time. I just kind of always think about how are they going to do this with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, and I don't know if there's another team except maybe the Eagles and the Cincinnati Bengals where
I was gonna say,
week
yeah,
in
the
week out,
Eagles.
yeah, teams are figuring out how do we defend both of these guys.
The Eagles and the
Mm,
Bengals too are kind of two sides of the same coin because they're both teams that have like two number ones in a way, like our 1A, 1B
mhm.
at receiver. The Eagles, however, are so dang good at running the ball that teams are forced to play single high against them and then they just punish them, right?
Yeah.
The Bengals are built more like Dallas, quite frankly, where there's question marks around the run game and the offensive line at times. Um, Such that defenses are able to say, okay, we're just going to like, shell off your receivers. So I
Yep.
think the question for Dallas is, okay, cool. Can you punish them? Is there a player like Ferguson who can work the middle of the field too? Um, and I think, yeah, that's going to go a long way towards deciding what kind of offense this is.
Uh, Sky, really quick too. You talked about Jake Ferguson. Cavante Turpin is somebody
Mm.
that we believe is going to be a little bit more utilized in this system than in past systems, and we already know what his speed can do. He's already kind of talked about when he signed with Dallas that part of him signing back with Dallas was that he was going to be used as a receiver. We've always looked at him as someone that could be a game wrecker just because of the ability to take the top off. But when you talk about work in the middle of the field, I think he's a guy that can really stress defenses, especially if you find some favorable matchups, getting him lined up against a linebacker. There's some options there to work the middle of the field, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, speaking of defensively, the Cowboys went out and got their eighth defensive coordinator in the last decade. It feels like exaggerating here, but Matt Eberflus, fired from Chicago, but was a respected defensive mind as a linebackers coach here, formerly in Dallas, and then obviously in Indianapolis as a defensive coordinator. He's back here. He doesn't have quite the same horses that he may have had in the front seven outside of Michael Parsons that he had in Indianapolis, losing a guy we've come familiar with, DeMarcus Lawrence, who went to Mina Kimes, Seattle Seahawks. We'll talk about him in a second. What are your expectations of Matt Eberflus, and can he get this Cowboys defense to be a playoff defense?
Very good defensive coach. I think whether or not Dallas, the defense can bounce back has a lot to do with things kind of out of his control in some
Mm,
ways. I think this is going to be very good pass defense. And the pass rush, I'm optimistic about all of the options they've added opposite Micah Parsons, ranging from your vets like Fowler to your rookies like Ezraku. I think the one player who schematically you talked about the Colts. I think there is some um, similarity rather or opportunity in this scheme would be Oso Odighizo's
Mm,
really underrated, in my
yes.
opinion, as one of the better pass rushing three techs in football. That's cool. Problem is, of course, same problem that it's been for the last 3 years, which is stopping the run.
mm.
And I don't think the changes that they've made give me that much hope. You'd really need Mozzie Smith to take a leap this year. And then the linebacking group, to me, is kind of the glaring weakness on this roster. Obviously, with the Marvin Overshone injured to start the season, it's a pretty ragtag group. Sorry to say.
Two names to watch, Mina. Marius
I
Leofau,
mean,
and
Yeah.
I liked what I saw from Jack Sanborn
I
in
like Jack
Chicago.
Sanborn, actually. He was good in Chicago.
Yeah.
I think they just crowded him out because they kept paying linebackers. It's still, though, I would say the biggest question, right? So I think, and I said this on my podcast, my optimistic case for the Dallas Cowboys is one where the offense is so explosive that they don't have to worry about stopping the run. It's kind of like a situational football. Because I do question whether or not that they've added the pieces to address that issue.
Yeah, these are a lot of the questions we got too. Like
Yeah.
we've been worried about the defensive tackle
There you
position,
go,
which has
Tua.
been an
Yeah.
issue for a while. And you brought up also Digizua. Thank you for the Osa love over here.
He's a good player, man.
He's a fantastic player, but one thing that he's run into for multiple years in his career is the fact is that point exactly is that Dallas has not had a defensive tackle like a
Yeah.
just a roadblock type guy to put him next to. So you get later in the season, the injuries happen. There's no depth at that position. Osa is being asked to do one tech things and hold double teams and stuff. And it's like, nah, that's not his game. He needs to get up to the passer. So we're also, that's a concern for us as well. It was interesting that you said that the passing defense was going to be good because we
Historically
got some questions
speaking,
at the corner.
Pass rush is gonna be good.
That's
Yeah,
for
Okay,
damn
pass,
sure.
the pass rush. Okay,
That's for
secondary.
damn
so
sure.
maybe I'm
Yeah.
like Jordan Lewis not being here is something
Balls,
we are
yeah.
heavily concerned about. Another underrated
Yeah.
defensive player as well that Dallas lost this past year. But yeah, like how are you feeling about the addition of DeMarcus Lawrence for Seattle?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously at his age, coming off of the injury, you always have to have reservations. I think
Mm,
one would hope that he brings the same tone setting, run defense that he has throughout his career, and we'll see what he's got left in the tank, so to speak, as a pass rusher. But they have kind of it's a very different style of defense. They play a lot more leaning on simulated pressures, and I think they have a enough of a rotation where they don't need him to be that every down player. So we'll see what he brings to the table.
Mina got me thinking about something I brought up a while back, I think before the draft, where I brought up that the Cowboys just don't invest in the real run stopping defensive tackles. So in that case, I need my linebackers to be more of the instinctual heady guys that can maybe mitigate having lesser defensive run stoppers. And when you said that you think linebackers are one of not the biggest question mark, I'm like, you know what? If they're not going to attack defensive tackle or one tech or nose tackle, then it is going to be up to
Yeah.
those backers. And
yeah,
if the backers aren't up for it, oh boy, it's going to be tough.
and that's what it's been like though.
Yeah.
That's
I know.
that's what it's been like
Same
for
old,
a
same old
while.
song, right? Yeah.
Same old
It's
song.
odd though, because we've talked about it, even with this past draft being very defensive tackle heavy, one of the better defensive tackle classes we've seen in a while. I feel like a true nose is a luxury in this game right now. I feel like if you got one, you hold them
Yeah.
for ransom, and to develop one, it's gonna take some time. You're not gonna. It's hard to acquire a guy ready that somebody's not already willing to pay. So it's kind of it's stressing me out because everyone's a three tech now. It's like, no, you need a big human sometimes for certain
Hey,
systems.
man. We're going to need our guy also to be Superman, basically.
Please. Oh, come on, Superman. Speaking of Superman, Mina, we know that you're kind of a fan of different shows and stuff. I know you love your reality TV, girl. I seen it. How did you how did you feel about the new Superman? Because you be giving me Lois.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm actually recapping it today. I have my football show, Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny, but I also have a pod where I recap TV and movies with my guy David Dennis Jr.
Mhm.
And we're gonna be recapping Superman today. Comes out tomorrow. Y'all can check it out. My YouTube page at Mina Kimes or viewer discretion. But the TLDR version is I really liked it. I thought it was great. Yeah, I was really into it. So, but I'll get into it in more detail on the pod.
Okay, we're gonna check
you
you
know
out.
who she gives me more of, and y'all can crush me because I'm new to this. So
Who?
I just started Smallville, right? Me and my son, and I did
Oh
not.
yeah,
I
she's
did
half
not know it
Asian.
was so good.
The
No,
original, the
Lana Lang is
Yes.
who you give
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Lana Lang, okay?
Oh,
And
that's a great compliment.
and
Yeah.
she's been good in the show. I think Lex Luthor in the show was amazing. I think he's one of the
Smallville
best.
was good. Smallville was
Smallville's so good
low-key a
right
really
now.
great show.
It
That ran
actually
for
is a
10
staple.
years, you guys. 10 seasons.
No one told
Crazy.
me though. No one
Yeah,
said,
you got a
hey, you
lot
got
of
to watch
Smallville to watch.
Smallville. So yeah, we're on
Sky,
season 4.
Sky ain't even watched Stranger Things either. He
No,
late.
I watched Stranger Things. No,
Wow.
no.
Oh, he did watch it. He hadn't watched it. He just caught up.
Oh, well,
I'm good
you
on
certainly
Stranger
have time
Things.
to catch up on that show because it barely ever comes out. Good
Once
Lord.
every 3 years. Jeez.
Right.
But we'll let Mina Kimes get going here. I know she's a very, very busy person, but we really thank you so much for coming on. This was fantastic. I hope it's not the last we see of you, because I absolutely love talking ball with you. I love listening to you talk ball. The rest of the nation, Cowboys Nation, that is, big fans of you, because you keep it real with the Cowboys. You don't fall into the ether, dare I say, in regards to the Cowboys. So we thank you so much, and to I know you're just
Don't get too comfortable over there doing that bi-weekly Philly
Eagles.
show, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Don't get too comfortable over there, girl. Because when I seen it, I got a little sick. I was like, wait, not my girl.
I know. You guys know I'm an honorary member of Cowboys Twitter, so I'll be back.
Always.
And of course, anything for Aisha. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you, Mina. Appreciate you.
Bye, y'all.
Take care.